Hello, welcome to our studio for this course on poetry.
Thank you so much.
We are happy to have you here as a poet. Hello viewers, I am happy to introduce our poet, creative writer Shreekumar Varma. He was born in 1955 in the Trivandrum royal family. He has done his MA and MPhil in English literature. That is an added advantage for us to look at poetry from an academic perspective as well. He has a lot of experience in journalism, publishing in different parts of India including Bombay and Chennai, and he has grown to become a great novelist, playwright and poet, in general a creative author, one who can live on creative writing. That is what I see in him, and for this kind of achievement he has won several recognitions for novels, for plays and for poetry as well. Some of his achievements include R.K. Narayan Award for Excellence in Writing, Charles Wallace Fellowship. It is a very prestigious fellowship for writers who go to normally this Stirling University in Scotland and stay there for some time, have their own creative writing there. He has been mentioned for this Crossword Book Award 2 times and also for this Man Asian Literary Prize, and he has won the first prize for his play Bow of Rama in this the Hindu All India Play Scripts competition. These are some of his achievements, and as a jury he has been serving several competitive programs to help select writers in different forms of writing. I am happy to welcome poet, novelist, playwright Shreekumar Varma to our studio. I hope this interaction will be very useful to you to understand poetry and creative writing in general. Welcome poet Shreekumar Varma.
Thank you so much. So good to be here.
Yeah, I am glad to see that you have written so many poems, novels, plays and one recognition for your creative output. This is a course on poetry, so our questions will be more related to poetry. Let us begin with the beginning of your journey in writing poetry. How did you come to writing poetry?
Basically, I think it began with storytelling. As a little boy, I used to tell stories and then that developed and I used to write short stories. And poetry was, I started focusing seriously on poetry when I wrote poetry during my school and college, and they were published in the college and school magazines.
Very good.
So the comments on the poetry after that, the responses to my poems encouraged me a little more, so I stayed with poetry also.
Okay.
But then the thing is, I decided that this was a vast field.
True.
Writing was a vast field.
True.
And when I did get into journalism, when I was with the Indian Express in Bombay, so when I got into that, I realized that every type of writing encouraged or enriched the other kind of writing.
True.
So which means journalism could influence my novels, my short stories, my plays, and the poetry was the core of it.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So when you got this core of poetry in your writing career, where did you, apart from your college or school magazine, where did you start publishing your poems?
It took some time because I started with the poetry page of these magazines. Those days there weren't so many outlets for poetry. So I started with the poetry page in magazines, and then in the newspaper, poetry page of newspapers, Sunday magazines and Friday papers and things like that. then once people started seeing that and reading that, they started asking me to contribute to anthologies.
Oh, very good.
So Penguin, Puffin, all these people started, when they had poetry anthologies, they started asking me. So it was always written for a particular thing.
Okay.
Then I started my own magazine.
Oh, good.
In Madras, it was briefly there, and it helped a lot of other writers as well. So there also there was an outlet for poetry.
Poetry publication.
Yes.
Okay. Now you said about contributing to anthologies and your own volumes.
No, but that is the problem.
Okay,
I
what
have
is the
never
problem?
had my own book published of poetry
Okay.
alone. Until I think last year, there was a book published with poetry written by me and my wife.
Okay.
It was called Twilight Hours.
Oh.
Not H-O-U-R-S, but O-U-R-S.
Okay.
Twilight Hours.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to wait till now to have my own book, and that too I'm sharing it with my wife's poetry.
Oh, that's great.
So I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I remember talking to, there was a video chat with I think the USIS had arranged this.
Okay.
And a very great, very big publisher who used to collaborate with Salman Rushdie. She and a few other people were there on the panel.
Okay.
And one of the questions that I asked was, I also write poetry, though I'm a novelist and a short story writer, I also write plays and poetry.
Okay.
So why is it not, in India alone, why is it not so, the publishers are not so accepting of poetry and plays?
True.
As compared to the others, other
Novels
forms
and
of
short stories.
Yes. So they said it's all over the world. It's a phenomenon which reaches throughout the world.
Okay.
So poetry and poetry needs a little more strain
Support.
on your part to to reach there.
Yeah.
That was then.
Okay.
Those days, I remember going to the British Council. There would be a little group of 3 or 4 people sitting in one cubicle and exchanging poems. Now it is the opposite.
Okay.
Wherever you go, you find poetry.
Okay.
You find everybody is writing poetry.
Oh,
there
that's
is nobody
great. That's a
who
good
does
news.
not. That's not good news.
Okay. Why so?
That is because when you replicate and multiply and go on writing as a daily routine, then your poetry suffers.
Okay. Quality suffers.
Quality suffers.
Okay.
So there are so many of these magazines, and there are so many of these, online platforms where you write poetry. So if you keep writing poetry just for the sake of, writing poetry a day, it's like having a meal.
Okay.
So you gorge so much that the quality of your poetry, the observation that you should bring to it, the interior monologue suffers. There is no silence, it's just words.
Yeah, true. It's good to see that you also have contributed to a poetry volume of nonsense poetry in India. Could you share some experience of that?
Yes, that is a very unique sort of thing, because this was brought out by Penguin, and they had used nonsense. It's a genre which has been neglected till now. So Satyajit Ray's father was one of the pioneers of this form of poetry. So they collected from various languages, from Malayalam, from Bengali, from all over the place, and they also asked for original poems from people. So I wrote 2 poems, I think, nonsense poems. That's a very interesting thing, because even though it's called nonsense poems, there is some sort of a deeper meaning to it. There is a core, as I say,
yes,
which holds it together. You can't just write anything you want. Even nonsense requires sense to put it together.
That's nicely put. Thank you. Can you share with us some experiences of the remarks, comments from editors, reviewers of your poetry, readers of your poetry?
I think basically it's been a good journey for me, because since I distribute my inspiration, my talents into different platforms, poetry is a very sacred place there.
Oh, that's great.
So I take a lot of effort to wait and write.
Good.
There is one platform where I have to, where they demand poetry every month, which
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
But even that sort of, takes care of my, the churning that is necessary to come out
Okay.
with poetry. So I think it's been a good journey, and the commentary and the feedback has been generally good. That's why they keep asking me, because I don't go about looking for a publisher or a book to write my poetry. So they keep coming to me as far as poetry is concerned.
Okay.
So I think that's a good sign.
That's great. That takes us to the next question. What sustains you as a poet? You have been a novelist, a playwright, but for this you are paying some special care. What sustains you as a poet?
In one of the poems, I think I will read it later and tell you about it. I have written that the silence of words is more important than the words itself.
Very good.
So when you're writing a novel, you're going the whole hog, you're creating another world, you're talking about characters, and you're creating an entire, infrastructure there. And short stories, you sort of tone it down and bring it down to one incident or so. And a play, it is something that you're watching, an audience is sitting there and watching, so you have to get all those things. But the poetry, it is something which is between you and your what is being written.
Okay.
There is nobody else in the picture. In
the poet and the word.
Yes.
Okay.
So not even the word just communicates and then it evaporates.
Okay.
Then what happens is each reader can make what sense he or she wants to from that.
Okay.
And even one particular reader, if he or she takes it in one sense, as time goes on, as they grow older, they see a different part of the poem, a different facet to the poem, dimension to the poem. So that is what should be in a poem.
Okay.
See, if you crowd it with ideas and concepts and words without giving a space between lines, then the poem is done for. It becomes a monument. It becomes there, unbreakable. But if you leave something for the reader to take home, that is what enhances the quality of each poem.
That's good. That's great. Now you have been able to sustain as a poet some difficulties, some problems, challenges you may have faced as a poet in writing, in publishing, and getting an audience for your poetry. Could you tell us about some challenges?
I think I've had it pretty easy. I don't know about other people, but somehow or the other, maybe because I was on this, I was a journalist and I was on that platform already as my job. I think that helped me, and it's been a long journey.
Yeah, it is.
So, and I was not very persistent or insistent that I should be published. See, people nowadays, when they write a novel, when they start writing a novel, they call me up and say, I'm writing this novel, where can I have it published? I didn't have any such
model or
yes, I just started writing, and I stayed true to that journey, and only after that did I look for a publishing or an outlet or ask people about where I can publish it. So that staying with that journey helped me, I think. And this thing of looking around, doing a play and everything, working off each other, that also I think helped me a lot in this.
Is there an element from novel or a play that you have brought into your poetry?
Absolutely. Basically, it's the other way around.
Oh, yeah.
From that core of inspiration which forms a poem. And what happens is now, like I used to tell my students, creativity is something like electricity. It is always there. But when you sit down to write, when you're ready for it, you switch on the light and then you channel it into a particular thing, a light or an air conditioner or a fan or whatever you want, water or whatever. So that electricity, that creativity is running through all the time. Your mind is always active, your heart is always beating.
Yeah, it is.
So that process is going on. But when you sit down to write, then begins the art of creation. So there are two things there. One is the writing, one is the inspiration. So I would say you divide it into two things, the heart and the art. So what comes from the art, but that need not necessarily be readable
Yeah,
to
that's right. That's
to a
right.
reader. So what you need is the art to form it
Yes.
and put it in a particular
Shape.
frame or shape, so that the reader can also identify. Many readers can identify,
True, true.
keeping that silence in mind.
Yeah. As you said earlier, lots of people are writing poetry today. Is there any piece of tip or advice that you want to give to other upcoming poets?
See, the problem is everybody is giving advices and exchanging tools and techniques and things like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you read other poets,
Okay.
I was also inspired by poetry, other poets, much earlier in my life, in my younger days.
Okay.
But you have to keep away all that when you go into serious writing, because all these people form a base, form your foundation, and then your building starts.
Yes.
Once that foundation is ready, and then you put your own bricks together and your own architecture together, and then you build your palaces of fantasy or whatever.
That's fantastic. That takes us to the next question on the model poets that you may have had in your mind when you start writing your poems. Who are those influences? Could you tell us?
I really don't remember, because other than the poets who I was taught, Keats and Wordsworth and the usual names, whom I started out with romantic poetry, and that freshness during that young age. I think we had it much more than the people now. They are sort of in a prison.
Okay.
They have a phone and they have the online, the screen, and they have inputs coming in from every direction. There you go out and you explode, and nature or the world or people. You found out things for yourself. So that gave you that quality of, which came straight to your heart. You didn't need a screen in between for your ideas and your thoughts and your inspiration.
Okay. When you are called a poet, you have a feeling. Similarly, when you are called a novelist or a playwright, you may have some kind of feeling. What is that feeling? I call it kick or some click. Is there any feeling like that in you as a poet?
That kick, the only thing is that the reader should not give that kick.
No, you must feel it as a poet.
Yes. No, the thing is, I think, basically that what you call a kick or a click or whatever comes when you get a feedback sometimes afterwards. For example, when you're writing a novel, you are seated in a lonely place in your room and you're creating an entire world. But later, after the book has reached its audience, you hear from somewhere, maybe the internet or somebody telling you, or during a classroom interaction, somebody tells you about a scene that they appreciated. That works. As far as a play is concerned, there are no barriers. You get it instantly. When the play is done, they have produced the play and you're seated along with the audience in a darkened room. The reaction, the response is instantaneous.
Yeah,
it's immediate.
it is.
So the laughter or the silence or the
claps,
everything is immediate. So you know the reaction. So that is the kick.
Okay.
It is not the label of, see, if they recognize me and say, you're the novelist, you're the playwright, that's just a little mask like the ones which we wear nowadays.
Yeah, it is a kind of identity.
It's not even an identity. It's just maybe a label. Which you can take off and throw.
Is it?
Yes. The more you are ready to take off that label and throw it away, the more genuine you are as a writer, because I think a lot of people go around with that label and that sustains them. It is not the label that should sustain you. It is the writing. Writing makes me write more.
Excellent. Okay. Now we live in a world where the questions of identity based on race, religion, gender and other categories influences so much. Is there anything of that kind of categories influencing your writing?
See, basically, unless you are writing about a situation, a political situation, an emotional situation where all this matters, when you're consciously doing that, that is the only time. But otherwise, it is not even the casual reader, the reader of poetry who is interested in this. It is the scholar, it is the researcher who looks into it and finds out where this fits in, where this fits in, and they connect the dots.
Yeah.
But as far as your writing is concerned, it's from whatever you feel.
Yeah.
Maybe a political thought, or maybe an emotional thought, or whatever it is, an inspiration, maybe a completely different, isolated sort of idea. That is what it's between you and the page, and like I said earlier. But it is the researcher, the scholar, and maybe one or two readers will find out all these pointers in it. But it is there all over the place. You can't avoid the problems of race, gender, the problems.
Yeah.
Because if you have to bring them in as a conscious effort, then you're a failure.
As a poet, as a creative writer.
But if you look at the problems that are created and your heart sort of goes out to it, and then you feel like writing, that's a different thing.
Okay.
That I think is the role of the poet, to voice these problems.
Okay, thank you. Now, when you said you had some models but you don't remember those names, at least some tools or techniques of writing poetry from those poets or from others, from other sources, have you read about them? Have you developed some techniques or tools like that?
I think it is not something which you keep as a template, or you build upon. But like I said, it all goes to make your foundation. So maybe different categories of poetry. I don't stick to one type of poetry, or one, not even one, architecture of poetry, the form of poetry. I try and build the form according to the emotion of that particular poem. So I may be influenced indirectly by poets, but I don't sort of think of these poems or poets and then build upon that. That wouldn't, especially now that I've come so far in my physical age, or my that now I can't sort of go back and think about all those things. They may inspire us, they may give us great joy, and it may all contribute to that quality which is there, which produces your poetry. So that contributes, but that does not generally influence in that way.
In creative writing classes, writers generally teach some kind of techniques of writing poetry or tools of writing poetry. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Yes. Because what happens is, you go there and you tell them what has gone before.
Okay.
And you, this is how I used to teach my students. I used to give them poetry from the masters.
Okay.
So they just absorb it. Okay. And then give them a few pointers, which is my take on it, or the general take on it by other scholars till now. But they have always to bring a new, fresh gaze upon it. Okay. So that's why even if you're marking, when you're a paper, a script, what you do is you look at what is there till now, the people who have already written, and what is the text till now, the guidelines, all that is already there. But you don't, forget the fact that the reader or the student also has one extra level that he or she brings to that experience.
Every writer brings in.
Yes. Okay. So that in the answer paper, if the student does that, overreaches the standard procedure, you should not be strict and say, no, this has to, conform to a certain thing. Because the youngster is the one who helps poetry grow.
True.
The next generation is the one who pushes poetry to grow.
Breaks the bounds.
Yes. So new ideas or new inspiration does not come in till the student who is influenced and inspired does his own thing.
Okay, that individuality
That
must come out.
individuality must come out. And the teacher must recognize that there is scope for it beyond the textbooks.
Okay. I think now our time comes for you to read your poems. The question is, what poem or poems do you think every reader should read in his lifetime or her lifetime?
I don't think there's anything like that. Even my son, I took him to a library for the first time and told him, you just go ahead.
Okay.
He said, you mean anything? Aren't there some taboo or anything which is prohibited? So I said, no, you just look around. I'll tell you. If it's that bad, I will tell you. But you just look around and pick what you want, because that's how the world is.
Yeah.
The world is all around for you, and you have to pick
It's
and
open.
choose. Yes, and you have to make your contribution, your own selection, your conscious selection.
Okay.
That's how you can contribute.
Okay. I was really happy that when you said the core of poetry is something sacred. That sacredness, to participate in that sacredness, I think every reader must read some poems.
The reader must read some poem, and the poet must prepare himself for that. It's a rite of passage that he has to go through to reach that place where he can write poetry that goes out into the world.
Okay.
And the reader must be aware of things that's a slow process. The reader, that's how he educates himself, that's how he arms himself, qualifies himself by reading.
Yeah. Now let's listen to your poems, please.
The first poem is about something which I'm very interested in, cinema.
Okay.
And this is in the words of a projector. There is a darkened room and people are watching a movie and the projector is talking.
Oh, I see. What is the title?
It's called Projector.
Oh, projector. Please go
In a hall where curtains crush the last sun rays, they wait in semi-silent stupor, hundreds facing a white bright screen, kindred as they share a dream. No one notices me, the screen sparkles to life and the story begins spouting from my eye. Through a magic ray slicing the night, image quickens and becomes life. I regurgitate film and fool their senses, throwing up carefully crafted scenes of life, of people and places and slices of happiness, humor and song with chest-heaving sighs. Shut your eyes, you'll know what I mean. The darkness mothers your every dream. There's hero and villain and ravishing bride, and love in the midst of punishing pride. So leave them with their popcorn and tears. They are safe in their ignorance. When they know light, when they know me, it's time for deliverance. That's one of them. And there's one about, there was a boat tragedy in a place called Kumaragam in Kerala.
Okay.
So after that, I was pretty much affected by the things that went on afterwards, the people who lost their lives and the families deprived of their people. So after that, I wrote this, and the poem is called Kumaragam. Days after the drowning, when companion villages raised the memory of their various dead, and boats and blame were re-examined, and officials packed up exhausted, dredging out certificates and compensations. One evening, when the whales had stilled the sky, like ghost singers fading out, and the lamp reached the threshold like any other evening, the old woman hobbled out, muttering her prayers and cursing each member of her family for leaving her alone, unaware of the reason for the terrible silence in the house that invaded even her deafness. And there's one very light poem about poet thinks he's a big person, he's full of ego and stuffed.
The label of a poet.
The label of a poet. But when he's sitting there, somebody comes to visit him. So this is called The Visitor. Each day I sit before the screen, facing a window, this garden of green, tall trees, birds and squirrels and bees, a languor that's nature's idea of peace. A white sky glows through in patches, offering itself as the muse catches. My eyes feast and the mind wanders, delicate pride as a writer ponders. And through the grandeur of my tale, she flutters to my vision without fail. Sharp-beaked and as small as my palm, a simple message shattering my calm. What does she know, this tiny bird, the heavenly ring of a single word, of worlds churned out from a writer's mill, as she hops about on my windowsill?
Oh, great. I listened to some kind of a rhyme here in this poem.
Yes, I try to experiment. Sometimes it's with the rhyme and the rhythm. There's one about I told you about the silence of words.
Yes.
I'll end with that one.
Oh, sure.
It's called the silence of words. I wonder even as I drink coffee and abandon newspapers yet again, and settle down to question the clear white screen, seeking words and moments, faces and bondings that aren't so ready-made as you think. We have our moments of consummate summation, when the muse hesitates, confused. A writer's world isn't filled by words, but by the silence of words. So there you have it, even as you hug the dark corner, picking off-colored beads scattered all over our predicament. It's not a happy world, but a seeking one, never brought to fruition, but by completing the circle of life, like my arms reaching around, yet losing you each time, but by that hair's breadth between fingers, I wonder still.
Oh, that's a lovely poem. Is there any philosophical dimension to this silence of words?
Yes, because everything, see, for one thing, for me, it all began with my love for music.
Okay.
So, between each words, within each word, within each letter, there is music.
That's wonderful. Could you tell us a little more about the music of poetry?
Because you, see, there are two aspects to it. One is the rhythm, the rhyme, the words themselves, where you place the word, the gravity of the word, the simplicity of the word, the little, teasing of the word, all that. And then there's also the silence of the word, between the words, what is unspoken, like you say, the heard melodies and unheard melodies, something like that. So I think music, which I've grown up with, all kinds of music.
Excellent.
That has helped me, and I think even while I'm writing words, there is music.
In novel also, in play also?
In all of them. Without music, I don't think a creative writer can organize and put his words together.
Okay.
That's my take on it. I don't know about
Yeah, it's all right. Thank you. Now let's come to our practical classroom situation.
Yes.
How do you want your poetry to be introduced to the students in the classroom?
I don't think I have any prescriptions for that, because
Okay.
it depends on how the lecturer or the professor reads my poem, and how each individual student takes it. Okay. That freedom has to be given. That's the only thing I ask. Okay. That freedom of interpreting a poem individually has to be given to the student.
Okay. Next question is related to again academic situation where we have to evaluate answers on poetry. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I told you, when you're writing, when you're evaluating poetry, you have to give that extra dimension possibility to the student, because it is not just the text or the guides or the scholars that have gone before who have formulated it, but there is an element of growth when the new reader adds his or her own bit. So I always did that. Whenever I was teaching poetry, I read it out, or I asked them to read it out, and then I asked them what they themselves felt about it. Okay. And only after that did I talk about the poem. Okay. So there is one element to it, one extra atmosphere to it, which you brought into it. So that poem lives from that moment onwards in a different way.
That's great. That means every reader must have the chance to read the poem by himself or herself.
Yes.
Do you also want to give importance to the loud reading of the poem?
That depends.
Or silent reading of the poem?
That depends on the person. There are certain people, like the silence of words may be better if you read it in silence. Okay. But another person may find it to to see the music of to realize the music of the words by reciting it aloud. So both are, see, there is nothing which is taboo. That is what I'm saying. There are no templates which need not be broken. Every template has the inbuilt bomb within to burst it open and leave place for another template or another reading of the poem.
We come to the last question. How would you want your student to read your poems? There are many students we have in our campus, in many campuses across the country. How would you like your student to read your poems?
I think if I had a prescription like that, I wouldn't be a poet at all. The poet has to leave his poem.
Just leave it.
Yes, you have to write the poem and then you have to leave it so that somebody else has full authority over it. And each individual, each reader, each student who picks up the poem is the owner of that poem from then on.
That means you are willing to disavow this ownership of your poetry.
Not ownership. I'm not talking about copyright or legal thing. I'm talking about the meaning, the value, the quality of the poem. Because unless a reader takes it and owns it and grows it as he grows older, that poem dies. It's a monument. Every monument is dead monument. You can't build further on a monument. So that when you monumentalize something like that, then it's over. But if you give it that position to potential to grow, then that poem lives forever, maybe.
Can I summarize my understanding of your words?
Yes.
Particularly the last one. Does it mean that you want the student or reader to give life to the poem that you have written on his own or her own and give any shape, any meaning to it?
Absolutely. There may be a core, like I said, there may be a core idea or understanding on which the poem is built. That remains because that is the poet's idea of it.
That is a starting point.
Yes, but even then, once you put that bomb in that you never know what stays and what, because even when I was 14, if I had read a poem, and then I read that same poem when I was 35, there's been a difference because not only has the poem acquired that sort of sensibility to me, I have grown. My experiences, my reading has grown. I have become bloated with other people's inspirations and understandings to be able to add my own new reading or new meaning to that.
Thank you so much for coming to our NPTEL studio, sharing your rich experience of writing poetry, teaching poetry. It has been wonderful for us. You have spoken to us about your own process of writing poetry, the challenges that you faced as a writer of poetry. Particularly in your case, you were lucky, you said you were into journalism, so you didn't have that much of difficulty, but others do face such difficulties that you have acknowledged. And from my listening to you, I understand that you lay so much of emphasis on the freedom of the writer and the freedom of the reader to write in any way, to shape up his or her own experience in any way, so that the poem lives on its own. I am very glad that you were also able to share your experience of teaching poetry in certain places where you want the readers to experience that joy of reading, experience that freedom of reading and interpreting the poems. Thank you so much.
It's been a wonderful day for me. IIT is a place where I would always enjoy coming back to.
You are always welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you.